Ronda Rousey won the fight decisively. No controversy, no doubt, no escape. The cage knew it. The crowd felt it. But the people holding the championship belt chose fear over truth, and history paused. History didn't stop because the fight was close. It stopped because it was too clear. Ronda Rousey stood under the lights, shoulders rising and falling, her knuckles still buzzing with the echo of impact. Victory had come easily, almost offensively so. The kind of win that leaves no room for debate, no angle for spin. The kind that strips decision-makers of excuses. That was the problem. Beyond the cage, behind tailored suits and practiced smiles, the organizers hesitated. Not because the rules were unclear, but because the outcome was. She wasn't just winning. She was overriding the story they prefer to tell. Too dominant, too unapologetic, too powerful to be shaped once crowned. The belt sat nearby, heavy and quiet, a symbol meant to honor conquest, now repurposed as leverage. The announcer stalled. Words were rearranged mid-sentence. Cameras lingered where they shouldn't, cut away when they must. The crowd sensed it before they understood it, confusion rippling into anger. Chanting turned uneven, then sharp. They weren't asking who won. They were asking why this moment was being stolen. Ronda's eyes scanned the edges of the octagon. She didn't need confirmation. She needed honesty. Instead, she saw avoidance. Officials who wouldn't meet her gaze. A decision forming without her voice in the room. Power rarely announces itself. It just withholds. She thought of every fight that led here. Every dismissal disguised as concern. Every time she'd been told to soften, to smile, to make herself smaller so the win would be easier to swallow. Tonight, she hadn't just ignored that advice, she'd annihilated it. And now the cost was visible. Minutes stretched. The crowd booed openly. Somewhere, a producer signaled to move on. Wrap it up. Control the damage. But the damage wasn't chaos. It was clarity. The kind institutions fear most. Ronda lowered her chin, then straightened. If they wouldn't crown her, she wouldn't pretend not to notice. She took one step toward the officials. Not aggressive, not pleading, just present. The cage, moments ago a battlefield, became a courtroom. No words were exchanged, but everything was said. Her silence wasn't submission. It was an accusation. You saw it. You know it. Say it. They didn't. The referee gestured for her to exit. The signal was small, procedural, almost polite. As if this were just another bout, just another night. As if history could be redirected by routine. Ronda turned toward the tunnel. That walk mattered more than any ceremony. Each step echoed louder than applause. The crowd erupted, not in celebration, but in protest. They understood now. This wasn't about a belt. It was about permission, about who gets validated and who is merely tolerated, no matter how undeniable their victory. Backstage, the noise faded into a dull roar. The air felt colder. Someone offered water. Someone mumbled reassurance. Timing issues. Optics. Future plans. Words designed to sound temporary, but mean never on your terms. Ronda listened. Then she shook her head. You don't get to delay truth, she said quietly. No microphones caught it. No headlines printed it. But the moment carried weight. Because power depends on silence. And she had broken hers without shouting. The shouting broke like a wave finally hitting shore. It wasn't one sound, it was many colliding. Booing layered over chanting. Anger sharpening every syllable of her name. The crowd wasn't confused anymore. Confusion had turned into certainty. And certainty had turned into outrage. Thousands of people on their feet, pointing not at the cage, but beyond it, toward the suits, the shadows, the places where decisions hid. Ronda stopped walking. That was all it took. The tunnel waited behind her, dark and quiet, promising distance and control. Ahead of her was the cage, still glowing, still loud, still refusing to close the moment. She turned back toward the noise, toward the shouting that now felt less like chaos and more like a demand. They were shouting for her, not for a belt, not for a ceremony, for acknowledgement. She stepped forward again, back into the light, and the sound exploded. The officials stiffened. This wasn't in the plan. Fighters were supposed to exit, cool off, comply. They weren't supposed to return without permission. They weren't supposed to stand there while the crowd made the decision out loud. Ronda climbed onto the edge of the cage and looked out. For the first time that night, she raised her hands, not in victory, not in surrender, but in stillness. The shouting softened, then focused. The arena leaned in as one body, waiting for her to speak. She didn't smile. "I fought," she said, her voice cutting clean through the noise. "By your rules." A pause. Heavy. Intentional. "I won." The word landed harder than any strike that night. More shouting. Louder now. Approval mixed with fury. Somewhere backstage, someone was already regretting letting a microphone get this close. Too late. The moment had escaped. "You can keep the belt," she continued. "But don't pretend this didn't happen." She gestured around her, to the cage, the crowd, the undeniable reality still hanging in the air like smoke. "This," she said, "is what power looks like when it's afraid." That did it. The arena detonated. Chants rolled like thunder, drowning out the announcer who desperately tried to reclaim control. Officials moved toward her, urgent now, hands raised, mouths forming words no one could hear. Order, policy, protocol, all the fragile tools used when authority cracks. Ronda stepped down on her own. She handed the microphone back gently, almost respectfully, not because she accepted their decision, but because she had already taken something more valuable than the belt. She had taken the narrative. As she walked away this time, the shouting followed her, not chasing, not begging, but carrying her forward. It echoed through the tunnel, through the concrete, through every place that had assumed silence would do the job. Behind her, the cage lights dimmed. Ahead of her, the future sharpened. But it wasn't just hers. It was everyone's who had ever been told, "Not yet. Not enough. Wait your turn." Every doubted fighter, every overlooked contender, every person who had been measured against someone else's fear felt it in that moment. Clarity. The world could deny a belt, a title, a ceremony, but it could not erase the fight that had been won, the proof that existed in blood, sweat, and motion. Ronda walked the hallways alone at first, the echoes of the crowd fading behind her, replaced by the cold fluorescent lights of the arena corridors. Each step was deliberate, each breath measured. She carried no gold, no ribbon, no token, but the weight of history had already settled on her shoulders. The real championship, the one no one could take away, was hers. Integrity, dominance, truth. Backstage, whispers filled the air. Journalists, promoters, and executives clustered like shadows in a storm, unsure what to do with someone who refused to conform to expectation. They had tried to contain her, to erase the immediacy of her triumph, to soften the narrative. But now she was walking away, on her own terms, and their control had slipped like sand through their fingers. In the quiet, she allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Not triumph, not vengeance, recognition. The kind that comes from knowing that no official, no policy, no belt could ever rewrite what had been done in the octagon. She had fought. She had won. And the world, whether it acknowledged it immediately or not, knew it. The roar of the arena might fade, but legends do not. They linger in every shout, in every retelling, in every person who draws inspiration from the audacity to claim one's rightful victory, even when denied. That night, Ronda Rousey became more than a fighter. She became a statement, a challenge, a spark. The belt had been withheld, but the victory had been immortalized in fire, in fury, and in the unwavering certainty of a champion who refused to bow to fear. And somewhere, in the shadows where decisions are made and power is hoarded, a truth settled uncomfortably. Denying a rightful champion changes nothing. It only reveals the weakness of those who pretend authority can override reality. Ronda stepped out into the night, the city lights catching on her skin, and the future, sharp, bright, and uncompromising, stretched endlessly ahead. She didn't need a belt. She already carried the world's recognition in every step, every heartbeat, and every pulse of defiance. The pulse of defiance didn't fade. It grew. It wasn't just inside her. It radiated outward, a quiet shockwave that touched everyone who had witnessed the injustice. Fans, commentators, even fighters who had stood in corners of arenas far away felt it. The message was simple, undeniable. Power can try to erase truth, but it cannot erase courage. Backstage, the tension was palpable. Officials whispered to one another, fumbling for excuses that sounded credible, scanning for someone to blame. Cameras still rolled, but no angle could hide what had happened in the cage. The fight had been won. The crowd had witnessed it. And Ronda, calm but unyielding, had made the subtle, seismic choice to walk without the belt, but to claim the moment in full anyway. Outside, reporters scribbled furiously, their notes capturing the dissonance between the expected ritual and the reality that refused to be contained. Headlines would later wrestle with it. Champion denied, legacy secured. The fighter who stood taller than the belt. It wasn't just a story about a fight. It was about fear, about control, about what happens when authority confronts someone unbreakable. Ronda paused at the exit, feeling the night air cool against her heated skin. Lights from the city reflected in her eyes. Not the flash of cameras, not the glare of spotlights, but something sharper, clarity. This was bigger than her, bigger than a single belt. It was a statement to every fighter, every woman, every person who had ever been told that their victory was inconvenient, premature, or threatening. Somewhere behind her, the sound of the crowd still echoed, growing distant but not gone. It was a reminder that history doesn't belong to the people who try to control it. It belongs to those who live it, who fight for it, and who refuse to bow when it's being stolen. She stepped into the streets, each movement deliberate, each step echoing with unspoken conviction. The night stretched ahead like a blade, sharp and infinite, and she knew the world was watching, not for a belt, not for applause, but for the unyielding truth she carried in every fiber of her being. The pulse of the city hummed around her, lights flickering against the wet streets, reflecting her every step. Each movement carried weight, not from the fight, not from the blood or sweat, but from the knowledge that she had won what could not be taken. Her truth, her dominance, her story. Every fiber of her being vibrated with it, alive with defiance, alive with the certainty that recognition could be delayed but never denied. She passed throngs of fans still streaming from the arena, some holding signs, some chanting her name. Their voices were distant but unmistakable, carrying across the avenues like wind through a canyon. She felt their energy seep into her, a reminder that what they had tried to suppress in the cage, her undeniable victory, had instead ignited something bigger than herself. Backstage, the officials had retreated into offices and conference rooms, trying to reconcile authority with reality. Their whispers couldn't reach her, couldn't undo what had been witnessed. Their power was fragile, dependent on compliance, on silence, on submission. She had given none of those things. Every flash of light from passing cars painted her in fleeting gold, ironic and beautiful, like the belt that had been denied her. She didn't need it. Not tonight. Not ever. Because the arena, the crowd, the world, even the walls themselves, remembered her victory in ways no medal could ever match. And then, in the quiet between city lights and distant sirens, she felt it. The future wasn't just ahead of her. It was hers to carve. Every fight yet to come, every challenge yet to rise, every doubter yet to speak. It all waited for her approach, all waiting for the same unwavering truth she now carried effortlessly. Every step she took felt heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavier because the weight of what had been denied lingered in the air, lighter because no one could ever take from her the truth she carried. She moved effortlessly, but the world seemed to bend slightly with her presence, sensing that she was no longer just a fighter in a cage, but a force rewriting the rules of recognition. The streets around her thrummed with life, yet she was separate from it, untouchable, a figure carved in motion and fire. Somewhere a car horn blared, distant footsteps echoed, and somewhere else, someone whispered her name in awe. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She had already been seen. Seen in victory, seen in defiance, seen in the unshakable certainty of her own power. And then it hit her, the truth of what this night really meant. The belt had been withheld, the ceremony denied, the validation blocked, but that denial only magnified her triumph. The world had tried to cage her victory in rules and procedures, but she had transcended them. Every doubter, every critic, every person who had whispered that she wasn't marketable enough or acceptable enough had witnessed something that could not be taken away. Her legacy was no longer something they could award or retract. It had become alive, a force that would ripple through every fight, every headline, every story told from this day forward. And the pulse of defiance that had been quiet moments ago now roared within her, visible in the set of her shoulders, the fire in her eyes, the unyielding pace of her walk. The city around her had transformed into a stage for her truth. Every light, every shadow, every echo of sound seemed to punctuate her presence. She was no longer simply a fighter. She was a statement, a warning, a legend in motion. No belt could validate her. No ceremony could contain her. She had become the embodiment of something far greater, the undeniable power of winning on one's own terms, regardless of who tries to deny it. And somewhere, high above, in offices where decisions are made and power is hoarded, a tremor ran through those who had tried to suppress her. They had denied her the physical symbol, but they could not deny what the world had already seen. She was a champion in every sense that mattered. The night stretched on, the city lights guiding her, the pulse of defiance echoing in her every step. And she walked forward knowing one thing with absolute clarity. The world may resist recognition, but it cannot resist the force of truth.